All right, guys. Well, thank you for having me on the call. Kim was able to speak on one of my calls a couple weeks back, and so I wanted to return the favor and speak to you guys about a topic that I love talking about. It's the power of your story. I didn't get glammed up or anything because that's just not me. And so part of that has to do with telling your story is to be authentically you, to if you hear my baby in the background, he's getting a bath. So just tune that out. But be authentically you. I am very low maintenance, especially as a second time new mom. I don't have time to shower half the time. I don't have time to do my hair just to go pick up my kids from school. Like, this is me. And so if that's you, be you and do that with vigor and unapologetically. So that's all part of it. There he goes. So if you were able to watch the video that I had Kim post in your page earlier, that tells a little bit about my story. I was able to tell my story on stage at Summit back in, it wasn't last year, it was the year before. So whatever year that was, 2015, which was great. I was very nervous, but it was exhilarating to be able to share that to such a great audience. You have that same opportunity when you're speaking to your people on Facebook. How many of you don't have to raise your hand, but I want you to ask yourself if you feel like, how many of you feel like you don't have a story? Like I said, okay. So a couple of you feel that way. We all have a story, no matter how big or how small it might be. I hope you don't have a story like mine. And if you haven't seen the video, my story is that I have multiple sclerosis, and I was diagnosed in 2009 when I thought I was at my healthiest. I was actually on my way to getting the diagnosis that I never thought I would get at age 28. I never thought that kind of thing would happen to me. I was healthy. I was losing weight. I was getting married that year. I had just qualified to run the Boston Marathon. And I was running that 2 months later. So to be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis out of nowhere was a shock. I've learned over the years that I was diagnosed for a reason. I was actually blessed with the diagnosis, and that's what I've come to realize. Most people will look at me like, are you absolutely insane? And honestly, part of my story is that if I hadn't been diagnosed, I would not be where I am right now with my health, and I wouldn't be where I am right now with my business, and being able to help all these people with their health and fitness journeys. Even if you don't have a diagnosis like that, I really hope you don't. But if you do, don't be afraid to share your struggles. Don't be afraid to share what brought you to Beachbody. And that's the thing, like, every single person on this call has a pre-Beachbody story. What brought you to sign up with your coach? What lured you in? What did they say to you? What were you looking for at that time? And I don't know how long some of you have been coaches. Maybe you're brand new, so that's fresh in your mind. Maybe it's been a long time, but you still remember what brought you to your coach. That's part of your story. Whether it was to lose weight or get a health condition under control, or maybe it was the business, or maybe it was just because you wanted a community of people to surround yourself with. Whatever it was is part of your story. But the thing that you should remember too is that we're not all about Beachbody. Right now, the big thing is hashtagging I am Team Beachbody. Well, you're a lot more than Team Beachbody. And Kim said this on our call, and I've said this for a long time too. You have to find your top 5 things that you are. You want to attract those kinds of people to yourself, and that's your avatar, right? And that's what Kim talked about on our call. And that goes along with your story too. So, like, I was just watching Family Feud. I am like a TV junkie. I will do my power hour while the TV is on in the background. That's how I managed my whole life. When I was in college, that's what I did. I had music on, everything. And so I was watching Family Feud, and I am a game show junkie. That's part of who I am, so that's part of my story. And so I post about that. I post about the fact that I love photography. And I intertwine those things into my fitness posts. So if I'm watching Wheel of Fortune, because I will be on Wheel of Fortune one day, it will happen, I intertwine that into fitness. So if I have people watch Wheel of Fortune, and when they call a vowel, they have to do 5 push-ups. Or if they solve the puzzle, they have to do 10 jumping jacks. Like stuff like that. Fit it in. Like if you're into soap operas and your demographic is stay-at-home moms who love soap operas, awesome. Every time somebody kisses on whatever soap opera you watch, they have to do 10 push-ups. Like different things like that are fun, get people involved, but are still part of your story because that's who you are, right? Photography. Sometimes I'll give away a free, if it's for local people, I'll give away a free 30-minute photo session if they, stick to their goals for 30 days. Stuff like that. You are so much more than Beachbody, so be talking about that. Make your Facebook your own little sitcom. I was on the cruise a couple of years ago with Beachbody, and I think it was Lindsay Matway that said, when you have a page that people want to go to every day, they will come to you, and they will want to see what you're doing. And so if you create that kind of thing and you're consistent with your posts, you're posting 3 to 4 times a day, and one of them is about fitness and nutrition and Beachbody, and the rest are just like your kids or your family, your dog, your whatever, your top 5 things, they're going to want to come to you. It's like a good book that they can't put down, or a reality television show that they can't wait to watch. So I'm going to look at some of the questions as they come in. Sometimes it's hard to think about who I actually am because it seems like I'm working all the time. So Michelle, I don't know what you do for a job, if you want to type that in. But I worked full-time too when I started this business. I worked at a health insurance company. Woo-hoo. Super boring, super not fun. You're a medical coder and coding instructor. Okay, so we were kind of in the same kind of field. That's part of who you are. And I worked all the flipping time. But I also had interests. So I don't know, maybe you're into gardening, maybe you're into reading books or whatever. You travel. Perfect. So your top places that you like to travel, give people travel tips. That's a good one, because I have no idea where to go for travel tips, and I have AAA and I don't even use them. So like if you want to attract others to you that travel, have a little travel tip Tuesday. There you go. I come up with themes for days. Now I just, whenever you post too, you want to make sure that you're adding value. So if you're telling part of your story, for example, I used to be over 200 pounds. I just had my second son. We waited 6 years in between. And if I'm being honest, we waited that long because I was selfishly not wanting to gain a lot of weight back. I'm just being honest. And that's super selfish. But I also, in the back of my mind, was very scared about what my MS was going to do again. Because after I stopped nursing my first son, my symptoms came back full-fledged, and then a year after that, that's when I found Shakeology. But I started to lose my eyesight, and so I was and I still am very nervous about not nursing this son. I'm nursing him now, but when I stop in 7 months, what's going to happen to me? That's part of my story that I'm trying to intertwine into my posts now, very delicately, because pregnancy is a very it's a hard subject to talk about on social media, because you never want to hurt anybody's feelings either. But there's still a way to be honest and to be real and to share the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's another point too that I want to make. You have to be authentically you, and be kind about how you share things, but make sure that you're being you and share the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like I didn't gain nearly as much as I did this time around because I did country heat the whole time. I did hammer and chisel, and I drank my Shakeology, and I was more on task with my food because I had my containers. So I had all of that, but I still gained weight that I'm having a very hard taking off while I nurse. So I'm very honest about that. The other day I was shopping for Punta Cana, and I was in the dressing room, and I took a picture of this black dress that I had finally found at least one outfit for the trip. And I had my pants around my ankles because I didn't have time to take them all the way off because Jackson was crying, and it was mayhem in the dressing room, and he had to nurse. And so I shared that struggle as a new mom times two, like that struggle of not enjoying shopping anymore. But with a funny spin of, this is it. This is like how it is now. And I'm okay with that. But there were moms that messaged me like saying, thank you for being real. So if you're having a hard time being real with your story because you're afraid of what people will think, or you feel like you have to be a picture perfect coach, you don't. People don't want picture perfect because that's unattainable. Even the coaches out there that will do their makeup and do their hair before they go pick up their kids, or everything looks like perfect, I'm telling you, it is not. They are just not sharing all the downtime. So don't feel, and the other thing too is to just put your blinders on and do your thing and do it well. Don't look at what other people are doing. Don't compare yourself to them. If you can look at somebody and benchmark off of what they're doing, and get ideas without copying them and still being true to you and not comparing yourself, then go for it. But I can't do that, so I don't follow any coaches. I do my own thing, and people are going to either fall in love with me or not like me, and I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. And you have to be able to accept that. The other thing too is when you're real and when you're telling your story, when you're adding value with every post, even if it's just to make somebody laugh, just make sure you're adding value with every post. But when you become real and when you start to really tell your story, you have to know that you have to have some thick skin. If you don't have it, you're going to start to thicken it. And when I first started this 5 years ago, it was 5 years ago, a couple days ago was my anniversary. But when I first started, I had the thinnest skin, like you could probably rip my skin like paper because it was so thin. And I took offense to everything. I would watch my friends list every day to see if it would drop and at this point, I don't even look at it. But I would be like, oh my gosh, I lost a friend. Who was it? And I would go through and try to figure it out. Every time I would post a post, I would post and then I would watch. I would sit there and be like, okay, how many likes am I going to get? How many comments am I going to get? Because I was afraid of what people would say because I was sharing my before and afters, or I was sharing things that meant something to me and I wanted to add value. I had one guy, I don't even know who this guy was. He was from England or something. And he messaged my husband and like didn't even message me. I don't even know who he was. Messaged my husband and said, you better watch out because your wife decided, I don't take medication for my MS. This guy didn't agree with that. And he sent him a message and said, you better watch out. Your wife is going to die. But before that, she's going to be in a bed. You're going to have to change her diapers and because she's not taking medication. And it was like this scathing message to my husband. I didn't know this person. And it hurt. And it made me scared. It was like, is that really going to happen? Come to find out this guy's wife had died from MS. And it's very sad. But he was coming from a place of hurt. And I tell you that story to prepare you for the people that are going to say, you shouldn't be posting that much about Beachbody. All you do is post about Beachbody. Oh, you're the shake girl or whatever. That's going to happen if you start to come out and talk about your story and talk about your journey. It's going to happen, but you have to understand that that is coming from a place of hurt in their heart, something that they're going through, that they're not comfortable with. It has nothing to do with you. So learn to overcome that, and personal development helps with that a lot. So just keep that in mind too, because that's a big hurdle in the journey of telling your story. Also realize that people aren't always seeing your posts. So if you feel like you are telling your story over and over and over again, and everybody must know your story, they don't. I still have people that I've been friends with on Facebook for a long time still ask me if I'm a Beachbody coach. They were like, oh, I didn't know that I could order Shakeology from you. Okay, really? Because I post about it all the time. Or I didn't know that you have MS. Really? Because my Facebook cover photo says that I have MS. So realize that not everybody sees your posts all the time. So you're not repeating yourself. You might feel like you are because you say it all the time. But when you share your story like it's a book, it will be put across in a nice, cohesive way, and be funny sometimes, and be yourself, and share from the heart. I want to read some of these comments. I'll get the most interaction on posts where I show mayhem and when my kids revolt from my attempts at healthy meals. There you go. So, Kristen, that's a great one. People love posts with your kids in them, no matter what it is. If your kids are in them, then people love them. Developing the thick skin is so liberating. It feels great not to give a you-know-what about what people think. It does feel great. There are still times where I do care, but at the end of the day, if I'm being me, and if you're leading with passion and heart, and you're not in it for the sale, but you're in it to touch someone's life, and you know yourself, you know your heart, so that's all that matters, right? So does anybody have questions? I'm just going to look over my notes and make sure that I'm touching on everything that I wanted to say. Anything from anybody? No. So I didn't want to make this call about me and my story. That's why I had Kim share my story before I got on. But one of the other things that I think a lot of coaches shy away from is sharing your story about the business opportunity and what this business may have done for you. I'll get to that question in 1 second. But even if today you only made $14 in a cycle for being Emerald, $14 to somebody could be a really big deal. And you should talk about that with the disclaimer about the income statement and all that. But you should talk about what the business has done for you. How much did you make last month? Total. That could be a car payment for some people. That could be their electric bill. So I think sometimes we look at all these coaches that have earned six figures or are in the million club, and we think, oh, I can't share my story. It's not as grandiose as theirs. Of course you can, because most people aren't going to think that that's even possible. I was on a call last night talking about the same topic, and I was going through my downline. It's full of million club members. I'm not there. But I have, you might know them, you might not. Bob Lucido is in the million club. Under him is Keith Callahan, million club. Nicole L. Jones, million club. Tony Furtado, million club. Then my coach, and then me. So 4 of my 5 uplines are in the million club. And when I started, I was like, there's no flipping way I could ever get to that point. I just want to earn my shakes every month. Talk about that to people, that you just wanted to earn your shakes every month. And that's attainable to people. The million club doesn't seem so realistic. So be sure to share, your story about how the community of your team makes you feel. How it feels after you do a workout, and make sure you line it up with your pre-Beachbody. So pre-Beachbody, I felt like this. I just did a workout and I feel like this, and I know I'm going to get to my goal because I have the community of Beachbody. So that's how you tell your story: pre, current, and then future, what you see for yourself. And then people will be drawn to that because they are in your pre-Beachbody spot right now. Do you have different criteria for what you're sharing on your personal page versus your business page? That's a great question. No. I usually, not even a third of the people, I want to say like maybe a quarter of the people on my business page are my friends on Facebook. So if I share the same exact post, it saves me time. I usually just share the same exact post on my like page as I do on my personal page. And that works for me. I don't have to rethink anything. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already done. But if I'm on a roll that day and I have tons of ideas on posts, I will post different things because I don't want to bombard my personal page with a bunch of stuff. So I'll throw the other stuff on my like page, and then I'll use that stuff on my personal page the next day. So there's no harm in double sharing your stuff. Any more tips on finding those 3 to 5 magic topics to talk about? People like Michelle who feel they don't have a story or interest. Yeah, sorry, my dog is playing with his antler on the hardwood floor. So, yes. Do you own a pet that's noisy and crazy? Do you, now he's looking at me, do you have a specific recipe that you like? Do you journal about it? I tell my coaches you need to journal about your things because you might even forget that some of these things are like game shows. How is that like one of your top 5? But it is, because I like to be fun and I'm competitive, and that's probably why I like game shows. So embrace your competitiveness. Embrace your job. If you don't like your job, embrace that and use it as fuel to your fire to make this business work even more. But what do you like about your job? There's got to be something. So talk about that. Talk about, I don't know, all the places you've been on your trips, things like that. But journaling about it helps a lot. And the biggest piece about your story is remembering where you were pre-Beachbody. And when you have your bad days, usually the thing bringing you down is the biggest piece of your story. So think about that too and journal about that. I'm not such a great journaler these days. I'm more of a post-it noter. So I don't journal, I post-it note it. So if I'm going through something, I'll write it down on a post-it note, and usually there's a good post on that. It might take a few days to come about, but use post-it notes to think of things. But I know for sure that you all have a story. I see your child in the background, Michelle. You have a story. Like, even if it's just about your kids. Like, my son is losing a tooth. He's 6 and it's his first loose tooth. That's part of my story. Like, I want to hold on to his littleness forever. So even things that you don't think are part of it are. Journal, like jot down, or yeah. So yeah, journal it, even if it takes a night. So sometimes I go through, this is kind of off topic. No, it's not off topic. Have you ever done the 5-year journal thing where you sit in a room or with music on and you literally think about where your life is going to be in 5 years, and you just write. You write without thinking. You write where you want to be, or where you are in that moment, what it smells like, who you're with, what you're feeling, what you're wearing, what's going on around you. You write about everything you possibly can as if it's happening to you right now, but it's 5 years from now. And you keep that somewhere. And when you go back and read it, again, you're writing as if you're just writing, as if no one's around. You don't stop. You don't stop and go back and read it. You just write. And you do that for 15 minutes. It's your 5-year plan. Then you go back when you're done and you read it. And when you read it, it turns into this moving goal list. And usually within that is a piece of your story. Just writing that is a piece of your story. For me, I did this 4 years ago, and it's kind of funny because I didn't have 2 kids. I was driving down to Cape Cod with my 1 child. And we were driving down to our Cape house, and we were sipping on hazelnut coffee, and our Shakeology had, in my whole thing, I wrote out what my Shakeology recipe was. And this was 4 years ago. And we were driving down to Cape Cod to our Cape house. Now looking back, we don't have a Cape house, but we got a camper that's parked down the Cape. And now we have 2 children. We don't have the one. And so looking back at that, I was like, oh my goodness, I was writing my story 5 years from now. And it became a working goal list. So do that too. And that will give you ideas on where your heart really is right now. Do you journal, then schedule your posts? I do not schedule my posts. I used to do that in groups, but the schedulers for your Facebook page, Facebook hates it when you use a scheduler. So they push those posts to the bottom of everybody's news feeds. So I post live all the time. I write in my calendar. I have a huge agenda, like it's the size of a book. And if I have a post idea, like the I Am Beachbody post, I would have forgotten to post that had I not written it down in my agenda to do that. So I write down my posts in an agenda, and then I go and make the post. Otherwise I'll forget. Any other questions about how to dig down deep into figuring out your story and then sharing it, making sure that every post that you put out there can add value, and at least one a day should have a call to action for people. So something like, I felt like this before Beachbody, now I feel like this, and this is where I'm going. How would you feel, or have you ever considered what it would feel like to have energy again? I would love to chat with you and get you involved in my next accountability group if that's something that you've been longing for. Boom. Message me if you'd like more information. It's a call to action for people attached to your story of where you have been and where you're going. Any other questions? That's what I have, Kim, but if you can think of anything else that you want me to cover.
Well, I think you did an awesome job, Melissa. And I think everyone that has been on the call probably is coming away with it with tons of ideas. I hope. I know you inspired me, and I was taking a lot of notes. So I really, really have to thank you for sharing your story. And, I think, and I'm sure you found this too, Melissa, when you share your story, those posts that are the most vulnerable and the most scary to put out there are usually the ones that are the most rewarding, because you usually get the most reaction from that. And especially you sharing something as personal as your journey with MS. I mean, thank you for doing that, by the way. I mean, I think that's cool. I wish more people would put those things out there. And I think it's just that reason you said. It's, fear of what are people going to say, and they don't have a thick skin and all that kind of stuff. So I guess my message to everybody out, and you're a perfect example of this, is just be brave. What's the worst thing that could happen? Yeah, you might have some haters, but you know what? They were never your friends to begin with. So anyway, anyone else have any more questions for Melissa?
Yeah, Kristen, don't get too caught up in that the business page needs to be more professional. I mean, look at me. Do I look professional? No, I do not. But this is what I look like in most of my stuff on Facebook and my professional page and all that. I will say that sharing your story will inspire other people. Kim mentioned it. I've hit Success Club every single month since I signed up. And so that's five years strong. And I would not have done that had I not shared my story. And I don't care that my story is so big that I have MS, but There are people out there with stories that, you know, they've lost 10 pounds and they're hitting Success Club, and they're unashamed of sharing their story, no matter how big or how small it is. And they're inspiring those 3 people a month to make the change. And that's the goal, is to just speak into people and help them then share their story. We all have one. We were all born. The day we were born, our story began. And our story goes way back to childhood. If you want to go there, like my overeating started in childhood. So you can get as deep as that.
It just doesn't work for our numbers. So I talked to my wife, and we can come in with an all-cash offer of $300,000.
Sarah's iPhone.
I don't know. We have to. I don't know how that happened.
Sounds good. Then just let
Sarah
me know.
took
Ready to
over the
go.
call, apparently. Okay, maybe that's a good note to end on. Melissa, I'm glad that we got everything covered. And thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
No problem. You guys have a great day.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
You're welcome.